Hey y'all, it's Renee with Reset with Renee. And I wanted to take some time to do a quick podcast video for you all. I have been having conversations over the holidays with people I love and care about, and reflecting on those and thinking about the work that I do. I've been meaning to really talk about my brand name, Reset. Like, how did I land on that? What does it mean? So what does a reset mean? And so I'm going to talk about this perhaps in a non-linear way. So just bear with me, be patient with me. But what I really see happening, and you will see this in other podcasts, episodes, and the blogs I'm putting on my website, I really see a lot of opportunity and invitation for intergenerational healing. And so, as I've said before, I'm Gen X. My parents are boomers. My child's Gen Z. I have friends who have children who are millennials, or have Gen Y. And so I have access to some of the challenges and opportunities that I see clients, friends, and family have. So I've had a couple conversations lately where what I hear is that people have been coping, okay? And to me, coping can be positive. It can be adaptive. It can be necessary. It can be healthy. It can also be unhealthy. And what happens, this is where it ties into reset. And this is what happened for me last year. Is that, and being in mental health, I have a lot of coping that is very healthy and positive, and being human, I have some coping that is not, just probably like you. And so what happened for me last year is I had so many traumatic events happen that completely overwhelmed all of my normal coping, all the healthy and unhealthy coping that I go to function and survive and adapt in my world. And that is not fun. And that is what happens to a lot of people when their coping no longer works for them, or when their coping is actually creating a whole nother set of problems, which is a typical reason people will come to work with me. Then they really need to get into healing. And that's a deeper level of work. And I think that so many people are going to be called to do more healing work because younger generations are having different sets of problems. They're more open to mental health. I've talked about that in other spaces and places. And so as younger generations are working on stuff, it is asking and requiring and inviting their parents and their family work environments to re-examine how they're coping, and if they need to do healing. So that's kind of one piece that I wanted to talk about, coping versus healing. So healing to me is really a true reset. For people to heal, they often have burdens that they're carrying from their past, or hurt from the present, fear about the future. And to deal with that, they've been coping. And so once the coping is sort of held differently, they start to get underneath the coping and look at what the root or the triggers are and what needs to be released. And so in our world, a lot of social conditioning, what you learned in your family and family dynamics and functioning, what you've learned in your culture, what you learned in school, what you learned from your peers, all of that led to the way that you are. And so for people to reset, it's really a good time for them to evaluate what's working, what's not working, what coping am I going to keep, and what deeper healing do I need. And so some pieces I see that really feed someone's healing process is about learning a mind-body connection. I believe a lot of people have dysregulated nervous systems. And in fact, that's on my to-do list for 2023. 2022 was the year of deep emotional and trauma healing, which I've been trying to do for most of my life anyway. And then this year, it's going to be about the physical reset. Trauma really takes your energy and depletes you and jacks up your system. And I came from a family environment where there was a lot of anxiety. Okay, so my mom has a lot of anxiety. Her mom had a lot of anxiety, and so there's just this anxious stew. Okay, so sidebar, information you may not know. So for me, or you were already in terms of conception. This is where I'm going. Intergenerational piece here. The egg that contains my DNA was housed already in my mother when she was in utero, while my grandmother was carrying her. And so the treatment of women who are pregnant is so important. Resourcing and supporting women and people in general is so important to our mental health, our physical health, our cultural health, the world, really. And so people that I'm talking with who are on a healing journey are now beginning to understand that they had some foundational things happen or not happen early on that they need to go back and developmentally get. So I saw a post from, I think it's the holistic psychologist earlier this week, talking about developmental age versus like actual age. And so chronologically, I'm a 48-year-old. I have some parts of me that are hyper developed. So those of you who have history of CPTSD, you may relate to being an old soul, like as a child, because you had to grow up fast, overdeveloped parts of you. And then because of that history, you may have parts of you that are underdeveloped. You've never had the opportunity to develop. And so healing can be about rebalancing that, going back and developmentally learning those pieces you missed or didn't have opportunity to fully develop, and kind of bringing balance to those parts of you, releasing the burden of those hyperdeveloped parts. And so one of the things I'm doing right now is doing a program through Irene Lyons. She does a 21 nervous day reset program, and I'm moving slowly through that. But before I took that, I watched a couple of her videos, and one of the videos that really spoke to me spoke to the idea of how caregivers respond to you when you're an infant. When we are born, we're in a very primitive place where we cannot manage ourselves. We cannot care for ourselves. We're dependent on our caregiver. And there's really not a distinction when you're an infant between you and your caregiver. And so parents and other caregivers, they're lending their nervous system and their regulatory capacity, if they have it, to infants. Okay. And then as the infants mature, they have more capacity brought online, hopefully. They learn then ideally to self-soothe and regulate. Here's the catch. A lot of people I know and that I work with, they didn't get that from their caregivers. Their caregivers may have been very well intended, okay? But a lot of parents fall on a continuum where they're either missing cues, they're neglecting consciously or unconsciously, and so they're not providing the opportunity for that young person to soothe. Or they're too responsive. They're too quick to jump in and try to fix. And they rob that younger person of the opportunity to learn to self-soothe. So to be human, it's really this delicate balance of skills of learning how to self-regulate and self-soothe on your own. And because we're human and we're wired to be in connection with others, when we're not able to do that, to then tap into someone else's capacity and to co-regulate. And that's a big piece of what happens in therapy sessions or with loved ones. You tap in and you borrow their regulatory capacity until you can come back into your window of tolerance. And so sometimes that self-soothing and self-regulating needs to be learned, because without it, what happens is coping. People cope by acting in, or they cope by acting out. So acting in would be getting quiet, people pleasing, doing things to not rock the boat. And acting out could be being loud, it could be stirring the pot, it could be using substances, like anything to distract away from whatever doesn't feel right inside. And so any of those coping behaviors can get you in trouble then, when they're no longer working for you in your intimate relationships, with partnering or parenting, with what's happening at work, or like in my instance, where so many things happen at one time, it just overwhelms your coping and your capacity, and then you got to dig deeper. And so to me, that's what a reset is. It's, what do we need to release? What do we need to unburden? What socialization do we need to maybe like take apart and see what still fits for us? And how do we get back into authentic connection to ourselves? How do we be authentically connected to the people that we are attached to and connected to and in relationship with? So what do we need to drop? What do we need to reclaim? What are we doing with our energy? What are we doing with our body? It's like, how do we need to total reset and reconnect and recalibrate? And once you do that, then you are set free. Okay. And I'm talking in an ideal environment where you have support, not only maybe from someone like me who you hire, but also family, also the systems in the world. So where you work, who you hang out with, where you go for medical treatment, that they're getting it and not adding stress or trauma to your world. So that's a whole separate thing. So let's say you're supported enough. So then you're at this place where you can level up. Okay, your energy is clear. You know who you are. You're not acting, you're not performing, you're not people pleasing. You're connected to yourself. You're not distracting with substances or behaviors or activities that are out of whack and causing you mental or physical health problems. And you are then at that point where you get to energetically move forward with your purpose, your spirit, with your whole heart, and you're creating. And that is so fun. So a lot of my coaching clients are at that place. Typically they come to me from from more of a business side of things. Maybe they've leveled up with their job, or they're working on something within the realm of business, and they would like some support around that. So however you might come to work with me or someone like me, whether it's therapy or coaching, to me, life is relationships. So what is your relationship with yourself? And what is your relationship with others? And where do you need it? So I hope that gives you some food for thought, particularly towards the end of the year. If you're one of those people that reflects about where you've been, where you are, where you'd like to go. I personally, when it comes to the new year, I prefer people think about an intention that they'd like to focus on and anchor and return back to for their new year, regardless of the outcome or regardless of what happens around them. We can't control those things sometimes. So setting goals can be helpful, but I think the new year can be such a setup for failure, and then there's a flame attack that happens after that. So I'd rather people just have more of a heart-centered intention. And so, yeah, reflect, check your coping. Do you need to heal? Where are you at, mind, body? And I think the other part that I meant to talk about at the beginning that I just skipped is that of disorders and diagnoses. So people will come to me and they'll say, I've been diagnosed with this, or my child's been diagnosed with this, or I struggle with this diagnosis disorder. And having a label and words to put to an experience is helpful. So I'm not knocking that. And at the same time, the medical model can oftentimes make things worse. And so learn what that diagnosis means, know what it means to have symptoms that reflect that diagnosis. That's coping. Information is helpful, but then I invite you to dig a little deeper and see what's underneath that. What need has not been met that led to symptoms and coping that it's now diagnosable? Okay, so we can start with that, but eventually healing involves working back to addressing unmet needs, whether those were developmental, relational, physical, psychological, spiritual, occupational, financial, whatever. Meeting those needs, oftentimes the symptoms turn down or go away because the need's been met and the wound, if there was a wound, has been tended. So hopefully this will become shorter and clear over time, but it's just, as I've interacted with people lately, it's just become so clear to me, coping versus healing. There's a difference. Not knocking coping. I've done a lot of coping, but the healing is the game changer. So if you're interested in talking about that, reach out. Let's reset.